I'm DJ.
And I'm Andrew.
Welcome to the One Shots Tavern podcast,
a TTRPG podcast where we seek out new ways to tell your stories through different systems and games. Today, we are talking to the wonderful people over at Living Metal Games, and we are actually going to be playtesting Crucible of Aether. Well, thank you guys for being here today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
If we could just go around and do quick little intros, what your background is with Living Metal, and then we'll jump into the history of the game.
I'm Jackie. I am the creative director and sort of lead at Living Metal Games. We were formed to work on Crucible of Aether. I personally have been playing TTRPGs for much of my entire life. Started with Pathfinder First Edition during sort of the Fourth Edition deluge, and have danced all around the genres from your crunchier dungeon crawly games to your Forged in the Dark and everything in between. And
Awesome.
I'm just excited to be part of that stage.
Yeah, and I'm Mike. I'm one of the writers on the team. I actually wrote the one shot that we're going to be playing today, The Fall of Haywood House. And I have been involved in TTRPGs a much smaller amount of time, about 5 or 6 years now. Started playing with D&D, playing a little bit of some other on the crunchier side of games like Cyberpunk, as well as, Powered by the Apocalypse stuff, Monster of the Week, things like that.
We are also joined by our wonderful friend here, Will Messler. You may have seen him on some other episodes. He goes way back with DJ and I. We started out on Pathfinder 2. Not on Pathfinder 2, on Pathfinder as well. So I think officially I cut my teeth on 3.5 first, but quickly jumped over, it sounds like, around the same time as you, Jackie. So in a way, I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, but pulling up the character sheets for Crucible of Aether, the first thing I thought, I was like, this reminds me of like a decade ago, and not in by no means in a bad way, in a like nostalgic way, because I think that, as we've had a huge shift towards more narrative games, rules have gotten really, really light, and like that's good in some tables and stuff, but there's also so much of like the build crafting and like gritty crunch that a lot of people crave, and that's why they end up playing games like Pathfinder still for years and years and years. Right. So I'm excited to play around with that. We said off podcast, this looks like probably one of the crunchier games that we will have tried out on the podcast so far. So we're excited to get into that.
Yeah. How many people are on your guys' team?
We currently have, so there's obviously myself as the lead. We have 2 dedicated writers, Mike included. We also have a sort of designer and layout person who actually worked on our logo and has designed the character sheet and all of that stuff. And then we have a couple people on contract, including some artists and editor at the moment. Big team for a super small indie, Small team for a large project.
Well, I'm really excited to get into this and to kind of learn not only the mechanics, but some of the lore of the world, and like your inspirations and stuff behind it, because this it looks like it's going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah, I guess I'll start that off and then turn it over to you guys with a question, I think mainly focused to Jackie, because it sounds like this kind of birthed from you. What was the thing that pushed you over the edge from, probably hypothetically, feel free to tell your story, homebrewing the crap out of Pathfinder and then being like, okay, I'm not satisfied, I need to make something else? Like, what was that turning point for you, like, in the initial origin of this game?
So it did come from Pathfinder, and it came from a few talking points. Is it okay if I tell a slightly long-winded story?
Absolutely.
Please, we will enjoy it.
We're in a podcast, aren't we?
Yeah. I know, but we're all trying to make good television. So I think when we all start getting into tabletop RPGs, we all hear about them from different places, and we have this idea in your head of what a tabletop RPG is, based off of just how you learned about it and all of that stuff. So when I got into Pathfinder, the thing that made me the most excited to sort of get into tabletop RPGs and really just, cut my teeth on these things was, this is a world that you can inhabit. You are playing a character that exists in a fantasy world with your friends, and you can do anything. you can sort of just go around and grow and explore and all of that stuff. And there was one thing that kind of kept messing with me in the back of my mind as I was playing these sort of D&D-esque RPGs, right? Which is that this is a game about fighting. Yes, there are other ways to do things. There are crafting systems. There are systems to sort of rule kingdoms, depending on the extra supplements you have, depending on your GM. But in the end, it is a game where you are playing classes that are meant to do fighting. And that is sort of how you're supposed to interact with the world. And I didn't particularly find that as interesting as it needed to be. Don't get me wrong. I love tactical combat, and I love sort of getting into the kind of meat of these things. But I wanted to be a person in this world that could interact with it in absolutely any way. So when I set out to make Crucible of Aether, I of course wanted to make a game that was, oh well, this is a game where there still is, tactical combat and all that stuff. But I wanted you to just feel like an individual in this world that literally could just go about it and interact with it with any kind of verb that you want, right? So I wanted a game where, hey, we got through that, potentially violent situation through just negotiation. Or, hey, we actually managed to not fight those monsters that say on their little thing worth 10 XP. We snuck around them. I also want to be rewarded for that. And so that was part one of sort of what inspired me. The second thing, which is I think also the other main talking point about Crucible of Aether, is that a lot of the times, in your sort of standard D&D style games, you have, say, a character class. A lot of the times I played with a lot of GMs that would be, what's the word? They would create their own kind of custom worlds and stuff. And I would be like, okay, in your world, what is a bard, right? Oh, I want to play a bard. What's a bard in your world? Or what does it mean to be a wizard in your world? And they would usually have some explanations. Oh, maybe there's some court of mages. Maybe magic is this, or maybe it's frowned upon, or it's not. And I said, okay, that's really cool, but I wish that my character, as I was making them, already knew where I was in the world. Like I wanted to make more or less pieces of a character. I wouldn't call them classes, but pieces of a character that had a place in the world by default. So when I set out to make a lot of the kinds of things in Crucible of Aether, you'll notice today that like there are things that people are playing are named after, factions or certain faiths and things like that. I wanted you to already understand your position in your in the world, and also be given sort of an ideology for you to either work with, work against, or kind of take alternate takes on. But I just wanted you to feel like you existed in this world, which is, too long didn't read. That is the main thing that inspired me to make this game.
That's so good.
I wanted to make a game where you exist in the world.
So essentially, you built the game with the sandbox in mind and gave the tools in order to interact with that sandbox so that players can go in and affect their surroundings the way they want to affect their surroundings. So if they want to build the sandcastle, they can build the sandcastle. If they want to build the moat, they can build the moat. Everything they need is packaged right here in Crucible of Aether's rule set, essentially. So here is a crunchy set of rules that is going to allow you to be as creative as you want to be.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I think what's nice about that is it's a matter of like you said, again, not to start the D&D bashing podcast, because we all have our own version of love for it, but like
yeah, of course.
It's like you said, like I go to play a wizard that doesn't inform me enough, right? Like it lacks the grounding in the setting, and really it's because the rule set is built to be quote unquote so flexible, but ends up giving you, at least on the roleplay side, a lot less tools to ground you or inspire you or like let you interact with the world around you. It's really, to your point, just a set of how do I attack The classic thing of like, why aren't there spells about like farming? Like, I think there's like one, right? Like, why aren't there
Yeah.
spells about other things other than like mind control for social encounters, which may be ethically a little screwy, and fireball, right? Like, I want to nuke them. And so that's exciting to me. I think DJ just made a video recently on TikTok about cozy gaming, and how it relates to TTRPGs and stuff. And there were some interesting recommendations, but I think I'd be interested too to see how this system operates with more of that approach. Like, hey, we're actually doing a very low combat adventure, and the goal is to build up a settlement or whatever, like not to go full Minecraft, but like it sounds like that is available within the system. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Absolutely. We've actually talked back and forth about doing at some point in the future like a Frostpunk campaign. Absolutely go all in on that, which would tie into the setting a little bit. And also talking about sort of the very optional nature of combat. Combat is deadly. It is crunchy. You can very quickly go down. Your enemies can very quickly go down, but it's also very optional. I'm running a campaign right now, just Jackie's in it, a few friends, that there's been 2 combats of the campaign, only one of which the players initiated. There's only been one person who died as a result of that combat, but the entire party has had 6 sessions. They've leveled, they've unlocked other careers, which is the name that we have for ability trees in the game, and they've progressed the plot without really involving combat at all.
I love that. That's so cool. Very cool. I've heard about we haven't tried it yet, but Mouse Ritter, is kind of like an anti combat game that's out there that was recommended, I think, on DJ's video. But I've always been like, okay, pretty much every game I've ever played is like it at the end of the day, you got to do some combat, or the mechanics kind of push you in that direction where it feels like if I want to actually interact with the system, I have to do combat. But or it's boiled down to just a skill check, and then it's terribly uninteresting, right? It's like, okay, cool, I accomplished the lockpick. Cool, moving on. So very cool.
Yeah.
Just looking at the character sheet and the skills, like the fact that if I want to do leatherworking, I'm not just making a dexterity check.
Right.
Or even just the addition of spirit. I don't know what that is, but it makes sense if you're talking about a cleric that's different than how like a wizard would cast or whatever. I mean, granted, wizard wisdom versus intelligence, but you get the point.
Of course.
It seems like you kind of flipped it on its head, where it's like the skill informs what needs to be done, and then you have things to help. Whereas like back in with the other systems that should not be named, it's kind of the adverse. Like you have like, here's your attribute score, here's the buff you get for it. Make sure you look at that, because you're going to want to stack it up with skills that are going to stack up well. And it looks like you kind of flipped it.
Yeah, and on top of that, there are ability trees in this game that are dedicated to just being people that interact with that stuff. Like in that same campaign, for example, Mike mentioned, I am playing a clothier. I am not playing an assassin. I'm not playing a secret diplomat. I am playing a clothier. My primary stuff that I was good at in the beginning was just weaving and a few like etiquette and things like that. As I've been doing stuff, I have been mostly like focusing on those individual skills. And on top of that, when it comes to attributes, they have a lot of ways that they tie into things, which it's easier to sort of see that as we play the game. But yeah, I wanted you to feel like, okay, you are a very multifaceted person. You are not a person of 6 numbers. You are a person of countless experience and a lot of numbers. Also, one last little thing is that spirit in this game is self-confidence versus social intelligence, and I really liked pulling that out of charisma personally.
That's nice. Yeah, I also just looking these over just for our listeners who haven't looked at stuff yet. You've got 8 stats. You've got grouped into physical and mental. You got strength, dex, endurance, speed. And then for mental, we've got intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and spirit. I'm curious about, because, I think it's a common question, I'm assuming. Can you differentiate dexterity and speed for me? What's the main difference there?
Absolutely. Speed is literally just how it is reaction time and physical movement. Dexterity is more of a adeptness of more of your hands. This will be things like picking locks, a fine motor skills, as it were, versus physical
Okay.
speed.
Yeah, so it's pulling the like reflex save, the the reaction time out of the dexterity, which that makes a lot of sense. I mean, they're very different skills if you really think about it. So that's cool. I like that. So because you could have like a terrible speed, right? And you could be a very dexterous individual that's performing more crafting based stuff, or and then not be good at maybe moving quickly.
The watchmaker who dodges all attacks.
Yeah.
Right? Like that would be weird.
And also going into that, talking about sort of the expansiveness of the system, going a little bit into the setting, you can become an undead in this game. Undead don't move terribly fast, but you still have a lot of options, even in combat, because of the way that skills interact with, the particular abilities that you might have as an undead.
And we haven't even talked about, I would say, the main talking point, which is that, you level up individual skills as you use them. So your attributes you can improve them as the game goes on, but, you'll become highly, I wouldn't call you specialized. It really just depends on your gameplay. But the fact that, like, hey, if the watchmaker keeps dodging things, they're going to get really good at dodge.
Yeah, I like that.
That's just, yeah. So,
well,
yeah.
and within that, I'm curious because again, as the game master, usually for my games, what do you guys have put in place? And again, I'm not one for just adding rules to limit fun, but like, how do you handle like the, I just want to keep spamming this skill and I'm doing nothing else today, and that's all I'm doing, and I just want to level and max up my stealth or whatever.
The Morrowind, I'm going to jump everywhere I go.
That problem. Like, is that a problem you've experienced in Crucible of Aether?
So I think it really comes down to whether you think it is a problem. And what I mean by that is, so it all comes down to, are people having fun?
Yeah.
I have had somebody have an entire session where they are just doing business, where they are messing with a sort of a corrupt noble's finances while other people are doing things, and they are just spamming business, and it's really, really fun. I've also seen people who kind of do the thing where, okay, it isn't so like, hey, I'm just trying to sneak all the time, and you can kind of read. I mean, we're all, have some experience with GMing. And in that case, you just give them different situations. You give them situations where stealth isn't as appropriate. You have people that have either really high perception or just literally, hey, you can't stealth your way into a bank vault. It's locked. You just different challenges.
And
things like that.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
As you level skills, they do get a little bit harder to level. And if you are spending the time into spamming a particular skill, not only are you going to advance a little bit more slowly and get fewer of the shiny toys that the other players are going to get, you're also going to have your numbers go up more slowly than you would if you approach the game in a more holistic way.
Okay, yeah.
So that almost grabs from like, Andrew said this off the bat when we first kind of jumped onto the call, but that sounds like it's really pulled from video games. I mean, specifically Oblivion and Skyrim.
Mm-hmm. This game was hugely inspired by Morrowind. The setting not so much, but a lot of the non-combat mechanics, I proudly will say I'm not inspired by Morrowind combat.
Right. I think what's interesting is lately I've been looking at a lot of different systems and talking to different designers, and we look back on the history of gaming, and it was the case that, Doom and all these early games, they were informed by TTRPGs. But we've then kind of extended the experience so far now that usually for most of us, I'm guessing we were playing video games before we were playing TTRPGs. And so now we're on the other side of it and we're playing these games and we're going, hold on a second, I've encountered a mechanic before that feels familiar, but is lacking in what I'm playing. And I've seen so many systems built entirely around like, I want to create that experience, but in a TTRPG. So I'm away from a screen and I'm playing it with my friends or whatever. Like Spencer Campbell, he did like a Dark Souls solo TTRPG called Rune. That's incredible. And it feels truly like tonally and mechanically so much like that experience from Dark Souls. And I didn't ever expect that could exist in a TTRPG. So I'm always excited when I see people pulling stuff from video games in an interesting way, because again, that is usually a more common touchstone for these mechanics. So yeah, I'm going to shift a little bit here. I want to hear about some of the setting before we get into it. And, I recently have been working on my own project, and I was working on a generic rule set for a while without the setting, informing the mechanics. And it wasn't working, right? It was too general. It was so difficult because I was trying to account for everything and didn't have enough flavor to inform it. And so ended up, flipping that script and then making sure that I was doing a setting first before then developing the system further. For you, which it sounds like the system came first, or was that not the case with the setting? Which kind of came first? And not only can you just intro us into the setting, but also just like how did it inform mechanics as it developed?
Of course. So, first of all, quick little introduction into the setting in general. So Crucible of Aether is a mystic industrial RPG, and this is a term that sort of we have coined within our team and as we've been advertising the game and so forth. And what we mean by this is that the game sort of sits in a strange ground where it's not quite steampunk, which I will explain why in just a second. And it's not quite, say, high fantasy or anything like that. It hits in this kind of middle place due to the very, very unique nature of what's going on in the world. But to answer your question, I created the mechanics and the setting in tandem. And this was just because I came at it with an incredibly holistic approach, right? I wanted, like I said when I was explaining some of the inspirations for this game, I wanted to create a world that you were able to just go around and live in and interact with. So everything informed everything else in terms of the mechanics and the like individual careers and things like that. But to give you a brief overview of the setting, so the game takes place in the Odean Empire, right, which is this uh, empire at the sort of beginning of its industrial age. But unlike in a lot of settings where industrialization came about due to the invention of, say, like the steam engine or a steam engine sort of alternative, instead the industrial age was brought about by a group of more or less a cult of transformed robot people who are given these strange dreams by a machine goddess to create things that they, as they are sort of putting it together, don't fully understand until they are able to create it. And on top of that, this kind of machine cult is highly tied to the empire itself. And the technology that they create is very much highly guarded and only given to very, very specific groups of people. Also, on top of that, a lot of the sort of power and high industrialization come not from, like I said, not from steam engines, but from building cities on top of these ancient sort of Geiger-esque ruins. And factories are powered by these strange, ever-turning gears of fleshy metal called source cogs. So an almost bio-horror element underneath these sort of industrialized cities. And going back to that whole, technology is highly guarded, and the fact that technology has kind of happened in these sort of jumps outside of a tech tree, right? So these people are, when they're given their dreams, it could be absolutely anything. You'll have entire parts of the world that feel almost like, oh, this part of the world feels very Gothic and Victorian, but places that are restricted from this technology almost feel like Byzantine or almost ancient Mesopotamian. And all of this is kind of clashed together in a way that only works in this world's sort of unique approach to technological advancement.
That's super interesting. It reminds me of two big things while you're describing it. Kind of reminds me of the Mythals from the Netherese Empire, if you're familiar with that, from like the Netherese
Oh, yeah.
craziness of I think it came out in 3rd edition. But yeah, like the ancient, civilization with high magic. But it also definitely feels more tonally similar to, I'd say, like Final Fantasy like 9 and like some of like the lower complexity ones. So Final Fantasy 9 maybe a little bit more steampunk than what this is, but definitely feels. What are some of the other inspirations for this other than like you mentioned Morrowind from like a kind of more mechanic point of view?
I was reading a lot of steampunk when I started working on the setting. Was really inspired by a lot of the sort of steampunk and gothic aesthetics, but I was a little bit frustrated with a lot of steampunk fiction at the time being very focused on industrial progress, but not like the actual effects of industrialization. So this world has, instead of it being entirely like, oh, it's all about invention and creating the new thing and putting gears on your hat. It's instead like there are factories with very, very, oppressed working class. There is intense pollution. There is very complicated kind of social disparity. And yes, there is invention, and invention at times is cool and something to be proud of. But it's the very real effects of what is a society discovering more or less untethered capitalism.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
consequences of
Yeah.
everything. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
And it's again very really tied into the mechanics. You can actually become a union organizer in this system.
I love that.
yeah, it is one of the career trees, and you unlock it by starting a union. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
But nobody's human here.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody has a little bit of animal features. It may be, somebody has talons and claws instead of feet. They've got feathering on their faces or hands. They may have insectoid features. They may have canine features or a little bit of a mouse person. But nobody's playing base human here. You all stand on a wooden walkway suspended above a knotted mass of metal spun into tendrils, veins, and great cords that layer and wrap and weft around and over one another. The metal strands kaleidoscope into different hues, from the dull red of dried blood to the sheen of new forged silver. Those strands are living metal, created by the ancient civilization known as the Docteel. Living metal made up every inch of Docteel technology, their devices, and their long-abandoned cities, now known as the Docteeli Hollows. Living metal covers every inch of the landscape around you as far as the eye can see, or at the very least as far as you can see, through the smog and between the crowds, the factories, and tenement buildings of this city. For the walkway you stand on is in the middle of Queen's Court, the very political and economic center of the Empire of Odeos. It's a sprawling metropolis known by many names: New Gradar, the Iron Expanse, the Spiderweb City. The city was built more than 2 centuries ago atop the largest Docteeli Hollow in the known world, stretching for miles in every direction. Queen's Court itself is also the largest city in the known world, with everyone, from the wealthiest noble families to the poverty-stricken who toil in factories, forging a life in a city jury-rigged over ancient ruins. No one has mastered the secrets of the Docteel. People cannot even destroy these living metal structures. Instead, they build over and through and around. Wooden boardwalks thread through the city instead of roads. Houses cling to the few patches of bare rock or perch precariously over a metal landscape that seems at times to breathe. People only went to all that trouble to access the most valuable of Docteeli artifacts: source cogs that spin endlessly and now power the vast clockwork factories of Empire. Hundreds of
If you're interested in the entirety of our playthrough, you can go ahead and check it out on our Patreon first to get the full video version, albeit there's a couple of weird processing errors, some glitchy stuff that we had in the recording process. You can follow us over on Spotify, Apple, what have you, and jump in and listen to the entirety of that playthrough right now. That was a lot of fun.
Yay!
Yeah, I'm glad you
I
all
don't think
Yeah,
I've ran a lot of dinner parties. It's always a nice little switch up.
Absolutely. I enjoyed that. I had fun. That is kind of how we don't rate things, we don't review things. It is merely a did we have fun, did we not have fun, and that's okay, because just because if I said I didn't have fun, doesn't mean that someone else wouldn't enjoy this, right? Because that's the nature of tabletop RPGs. Is there is a tabletop RPG for everyone. I very much had fun with this one, so I would say probably would be something I would visit again.
I think that
Absolutely.
for me, the thing I expected to happen kind of didn't in a good way. I'm a little cautious when it comes to the crunchier stuff, so I think that maybe even in us describing our first impressions to you guys may have been like, it's not that crunchy. Because it's kind of not. It's like once the stuff is set up, right? It's all the crunch is baked, right? You're not doing a whole lot of extra labor,
Right.
in order to accomplish what you want to do. And so I think that that's nice. I struggle with the XP only on success thing, because like I will always want like people to fail forward, when I'm running games. So that's something that I don't love as much, but I don't know if it's wrong, right? Like there's plenty of games that run it that way. That's much more of a preference thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, like there's a lot going on here in a good way that it was not nearly as overwhelming. I mean, putting together a character sheet first session would probably be a lot, I would imagine. But I could be wrong there. But I think that overall it was a very flexible, and there's a lot going on that we could do. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's we're also very conscious of the crunchiness of the game, especially in character
Right.
creation. So like as we're going forward, we have these tools that are set up. Like the form fillable PDF is going to be there for release. We're going to have the spreadsheets for release that you can just hit options to create a character.
Right.
You
Very
can
nice.
set all of that up through the spreadsheet, and it'll all be set up for you. Not set up for you so much as you can choose and see the various options, and you won't like forget a step or something.
Right.
And also the XP on failure thing. That's a bit of feedback that we have gotten consistently over the course of playtesting. And that's something that we're looking at in terms of what the leveling experience is, sort of the expected value of a given check at a given XP return, at a given likelihood of success. That we're doing a lot of that behind the scenes to try and make it as seamless as possible at the table. We're also building out, GM tools and how to describe, how to think about the game. We've got tiers of skill checks of like, this is how you present a more difficult check. This is the context that you have it for. This is when you're building a campaign, how you think about creating the difficulty. And also like starting at higher levels or starting with more specialized characters, things like that, to really make the experience as seamless as possible.
I think the thing I like the most. So I was expecting by how crunchy keep saying crunchy, by how complex the character sheet looks, that it was going to kind of have like a 3-5 flavor to it, where it's like these are your actions and here's what you're going to do. But in actuality, it was almost, I mean, I can say a lot, but it was a lot like Cypher. I just told you what I wanted to do, and the GM decides what is the skill check that would make the most sense for you to do that. And then you need to explain why that's the case. So where I was expecting a lot of railroads, they weren't necessarily there. And then even like just as you've been playing, I've been looking at the rules companion. I really like how your mastery trees, they flare out instead of the other way around. So like you don't have to worry about kind of like picking the wrong feat or whatnot like you would have to do with Pathfinder. So I had a lot of fun. I definitely do think I want to play this again. I want to see how combat works too.
Right.
I think that's something I'm really interested about, and if that flexibility is still kind of there as well,
Absolutely.
which I definitely think would.
Oh, it definitely is, and yeah, the combat is something that is, far from the end of okay, well, you still just make a check. It's incredibly like nuanced and tactical to the point where you making those kinds of nuanced decisions can be the make or break between yeah, I'm a peasant with a stick, but this is how I defeat the armored knight, and it's entirely just a quick but strategic experience.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And it also weaves through, your character building choices as well, that some of the careers mesh with each other really, really well, make for some really powerful combinations, or even within careers, you can have very different approaches to combat. For instance, the Ashen Reservist, there's a way to build that character that very much focuses on buffs and debuffs and granting and manipulating the action economy. And there's a way
That's
to build
cool.
that is the stereotypical black powder ghost of, I am going to run and gun, I am going to fire my pistol and try and disappear from combat and control combat in that way.
Yeah.
And that's just within a single career.
Yep.
That's super
Yeah, I
cool.
noticed that because I've got Pariah. Once per scene, I can just attempt to hide for free. Don't have to use an action point to do so, right? Which I think is super interesting. I'm with Will on this. I would love to play this again. Definitely would love to experience kind of that more maybe not campaign, but just like, multi-shot
yeah.
because it allows me to be creative with my actions in a way that I really like, that I get out of Cypher, right? Or I get out of mostly Cypher. It's also got enough of like a guideline with the skill trees and like really kind of like diving in towards that speciality by like picking exactly the right thing, right? It's I want to be a stealth archer in Skyrim, It's
And you can absolutely build a stealth archer in this
Right.
game. It means you're going to be, you're not going to have as many options in a social interaction, but you
Right.
can absolutely be a stealth archer. If the campaign ends up with a lot of social interactions, you
Yeah.
might feel like you could have made different choices.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, for
Yeah.
me, most of my stuff is all like combat eccentric-esque. Like I still have like a buff to perception, and I have some skills that I could use outside of that. But it kind of fell on just skills and roleplay for me because we weren't in that. But I definitely could see how like picking up a different skill tree or not skill tree, but career or whatever would help kind of augment that depending on the flavor of the game as you're progressing. You're like, okay, I have these mechanics in my back pocket for when things go awry, but I've actually invested more in the flavor of the game we're running without what looks like too much of a penalty, right? Like it always sucks when you build a character for a specific kind of campaign and then things go in a different direction and it's just like, oh, I don't have those abilities like to really use right now. They're just kind of on a shelf. But this seems like there's a lot of, I don't know, there's more going on, so you can still find ways to make use of it.
Well, there's
Yeah.
like no waste too, right? Like if you're gonna be, super Rogerton's 5,000, you can do that. But if you're stuck within a social situation, you're
Yeah.
gonna be using those skills and getting XP in those skills. So like it's not so much what I choose when I level up is going to shape the character. It's like, no, the things that you need to get done and done well are going to shape your
Yeah.
character. Which
Yeah.
almost like real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Well,
Yeah.
and it's also a
Immersion?
situation of like characters can, at the end of a campaign, be completely different from what you conceived of at
Yeah.
the start.
I love that.
Like
Mhm.
our character in one of our playtest campaigns has started out as sort of an itinerant warrior priest and has invested in the physician career and in healing people. Other players, the thief career might be the most frequently unlocked of careers,
What?
but
No
I
way.
know.
yeah. RPG players wanting to steal things? What?
Never.
No.
Never.
But there's a lot of
That was
other
like-
unlocks that come out along the way.
Now, on
there's-
the flavor side and kind of to the setting, by the way, really enjoyed the setting. It's not like a lot of environments that I've played in, so that was really fun and flavorful. Have you all considered with Crucible of Aether? Wait, is it Aether or Ether?
I say Aether.
Aether.
Other people say
Aether.
Ether.
Okay.
They're both
Yeah.
correct.
So with this game, what do you see like down the road? Like, one, I want to talk about playtesting, but two, like, do you see like with this game maybe making another setting for it that uses the similar mechanics, and you've got, you know, your Starfinder to your Pathfinder kind of thing, or is that something you guys have looked at?
So, first of all, the setting is huge and expansive.
Right.
We in the Rules Companion have kind of cut down a lot of what we have in what is the actual rule book that we have kind of been working on internally. And there is, a huge, variety of different parts of the world. That being said, even that, the amount of things that we have in the core rule book is only a portion of the greater world, and there are other places that have very different vibes. I talked about a little bit of
Yeah.
that old empire that was destroyed by plagues. I have been thinking about if, and this is dreaming big for a game like this, but
Right.
if things work out, I would love to have a setting that has slightly tweaked mechanics that takes place over there, which is very much more post-apocalyptic, or in other
Okay.
parts of the world that have other things. Also, that being said, the core idea behind this game, the leveling up skills, the different careers and stuff, are definitely hackable. So if
Yeah.
somebody did want to make a sci-fi setting, or if we did, if other people did, I would be happy to support that. And also, happy to do it myself if we have the space.
Right. That's awesome.
Andrew and
and
I are both writing our own projects right now, and mine's more of like a drop-in kind of thing, for the most part.
Just
And
a
I'm just sitting
setting
there,
overtop the rules.
yeah. And so I'm just like looking at this and like looking at like some of my like racing mechanics that I came up with, and I'm like, yeah, this could work to just drop in, like, because I have to like pay attention to all of the systems and all of the rollings, right, and be like, is my claim actually true?
That this works
And
with most systems.
I like this because there's this there's 100 possibilities when you roll the die on what you're gonna get, right? It feels like, yeah, sure, you could say it's very similar to rolling a d20, right? As far as like success and failure goes, but there's something about it that feels more like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Granular?
Granular, risky, like, even though every time I've ever had to roll a D100 in 5th edition, for example, I'll be honest, it's always been a failure. So
It's
this
working
is
great for you.
this is interesting. It's a fun twist on the dice mechanic for a tabletop RPG. So
Thank you.
and the D100 system also sort of helps have a feeling of sort of granular advance. So like even within the course of a session, you could have 3 skills increased by 3 or 4 or
Right.
5 or something like that. That it's a small but noticeable mechanical improvement
Yeah.
over in the course of a single session play.
yeah.
What kind of slightly shifting gears here, because I'm in this world right now, just starting it for the last month, and DJ's going to be going there with his racing mechanics. But could you guys just like talk for a minute about playtesting and what that's been like, and organizing a playtest and stress testing your game, making multiple versions of it? Yeah, start wherever you want, but what's that been like?
So it has been an absolutely wonderful experience. So I will admit, when I first started working on this game, I worked on this game working in a comic book store. This was many years ago. I kind of was on and off the project. I was writing this expansive world, and I was very insular. I didn't have much of an online presence, anything like that. And we opened up our public playtesting, very recently, right? We opened it up at the beginning of this month, and hosting it all on our Discord server, which I don't know if I welcome anybody to join. I don't know if you want to somehow put
That's
that out
fine,
there
yeah.
if you're comfortable. Edit me out if you don't. So one, we have been getting people from all over, I guess the spectrum of uh, TTRPG fandom that I did not expect, that have taken these, wild new views on the game. Because I'm thinking to myself, oh, most of my friends are into like Blade in the Dark. I mean, you just said like you're so used to playing rules light games and things like that. And meanwhile, one of the most played games of our playtesters that have found our game through my posts, through different online fandom, through discussion, have been in the Lancer community. And they'd be like, war games. And I'm like, and they're like, wait, you mean I don't have to fight all the time? And that's been really fun. Um,
That's fun.
Yeah, crunchy combat that isn't constant. What?
yeah, it's
What?
wild.
that.
And so to kind of take that outside perspective, that has been really, really wonderful, and it's been really fulfilling to have people sort of discuss the different parts of their game that they find incredibly interesting. And on top of that, like, it has been absolutely wonderful when other people find these flaws in your game, things that they really just like, oh, this doesn't work, I rub up against this, but in a way that you realize, okay, it's not like, oh, oh no, criticism. It's like, no, they're
Yeah.
on the journey with you. You have all
Right.
these people that are so interested in being like, hey, that doesn't work. There's a typo. Here's a thing here. And they want this game to be good. And you're just
Mm.
getting more and more people onto your ship, kind of being like, hey, we're all here to help you out. We're here to make this game that we think has a lot of potential to be the best thing it can be. And it has been honestly absolutely magical. That also being said, we've been running a lot of playtests, which is really, really cool. And oh my God, is it tiring? But it is
Yeah.
worth it every time.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've run Incident on Ilgra personally half a dozen times since I wrote the module. I think, Jackie, you've run it 4 or 5 times now.
Yeah, my 6 is on Tuesday.
Yeah. And then we're also going to be doing further playtesting of this module, Fall of Haywood House at AwesomeCon and Unpubbed in the next month as well. So we're chugging along and trying to get as much feedback as we can to do another set of playtesting, incorporating that feedback to make sure that we don't over tweak and knock the wheels off of what's working as we move towards launch. Fingers crossed as soon as we possibly can.
That's awesome. Yeah. Purely selfish question. What advice would you give to game designers that are ready to take the plunge into playtesting?
I know this is going to sound really blunt, but
That's fine.
just do it and
Yeah.
be really, really open. Don't worry that your game has this flaw that exists. Don't worry about if 5 people join, your Discord server or 50 people join your Discord server. Just do it and just be open to what everybody says. And also, one of my favorite bits of advice that I have always heard, which is when people play your game, listen to what they say is wrong, but do not listen to their answer to it.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. No, because
Yeah.
people are good at knowing what's wrong. They're bad at creating the solution for it. Yeah. No, I hard agree with that. That being said, Will maybe found the biggest problem in my game and had a pretty solid solution that worked perfectly.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I like numbers.
Yeah.
He's a numbers guy.
I appreciate that you guys actually reached out. That was pretty awesome. So anybody listening at home, if you are like, I don't know if I should reach out or see if they'll find me, reach out. Because we would absolutely love to do more of this with projects similar to this. Because yeah, I mean,
yeah, basically, if you guys are okay with us extending an invitation, we'd love to include like your Discord in the description or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be fantastic.
Okay.
So
if you guys are listening right now, you are more than welcome to hop over into the Discord server. There's open playtesting going on right now, from what I understand. And anything you guys want to say on the welcoming people into your side of the world?
Yeah, come and take this journey with us. Also, not just people who are players, but also we wrote the Incident on Ilgrif one shot from the GM perspective, because part of what we are testing here is it able to run outside of our minds, and making sure that we build the GM tools in a way that helps a GM be able to run a very open-ended adventure that lets players take advantage of that huge toolkit that they have without, driving a GM crazy.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for playing with us, having fun, and teaching us about your game. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having us.